if this is how I identify, if this is who I am, I think this is who I am, then how do I come to terms with what the media is feeding me in terms of who I'm allowed to be in the world?
The stories we see about ourselves have the power to shape our future. In this series, we'll honor some of the most groundbreaking moments of queer Latina representation in TV and film. Moments that grounded us in history, made us feel seen, and humanized our existence in front of and behind the camera. Join us in uplifting the images, the artists, the stories, the visions of us. It's thanks to these Latina bisexual actors and writers behind these characters that powerful and three-dimensional depictions have been achieved. These are just some of the milestones accomplished by bisexual storytellers who brought their own voice to the table and pushed the narratives beyond tropes.
You're testifying in an aggravated assault case tomorrow. The DA is worried about how you present yourself on the stand.
Why? I'm fine on the stand. Look, I'll make this real simple so even these dum-dums can understand. Man did crime.
Rosa Diaz, I mean, she reminds me so much of me. She's just unapologetically herself, doesn't take shit from anyone. She's fun and she's silly and she's just, I don't know, like she's a fully fleshed out character. You know, she's not someone's side character or someone's like, you know, queer best friend. She is one of the stars of this massive sitcom. And I like to think of that show as a found family comedy that is like a workplace comedy and a found family comedy, and she is one of the family members. And so I love Stephanie Beatrice. I think like she just shines so much in that role, but I think so many people see themselves in that role. I know that I do, but I know so many others. And yes, she did have a coming out episode, which was great. But also that's not what the whole show is about. And that's not what her whole character is about. And so she gets to be, you know, kind of messy and fun and, you know, a lot of the things that I feel we don't always get to be.
Something I'd like to say. I'm a pretty private person, so this is kind of hard for me, but here we go. I'm bisexual.
I had been playing Rosa Diaz on the show for a couple years, and then I decided to, on Twitter, I sort of like casually, I guess, came out as bi. I was like, I retweeted something that Aubrey Plaza, another actress, tweeted about falling in love with all kinds of people. Didn't matter who they were. It was just more about the person. And I was like, yeah. And then people were like, ah, like flip a table, you know, like pasta flying through the air, like, whoa, is Rosa gay, you know? And I secretly in my heart had been playing Rosa Diaz as a queer character. I didn't know what that meant exactly. I didn't know how that was gonna flesh itself out. But for me, when I played that character from the beginning, I thought, I think that this character is not straight. I don't know what that means for her, and I'm not the writer of the series. I can't shape the series in that way. I don't have that control, but I think that this character is queer. And so shortly after I came out as bi, the showrunner on the show, his name's Dan Gore, he's also the head writer, called me before the 5th season and said, hey, we were thinking if you're comfortable with it, how would you feel about making Rosa bisexual like you are bisexual? And I was like, absolutely. I can't wait. And that sort of started the ball rolling because he felt he had my blessing, which he did. The writer's room began sort of percolating on different ideas. And we had lots of different kinds of people in the writer's room. But I think what we didn't have was a bisexual person. So that's where I came in because I've had specific experiences, especially as a Latina bisexual person, that I wanted to share with the writer's room as they were shaping those episodes.
Stephanie brought it to the table of saying, okay, this is what it is for me to be Latinx and bisexual and exist in this space. And I think it made sense because Rosa's character exists in a very male-dominated, cisgendered world. So why would you have people that don't reflect what she is, not in the room, to be able to consult and say what's the right way to navigate that and put that in the writing.
There's so many times on TV where you watch people sort of dance around this idea of bisexuality. It gets swept under the rug. And that's a thing that happens a lot with bisexuality, it gets swept under the rug.
And the thing of it is that as a writer, you should be able to write for other characters and, other sexualities and things. But the truth be told, there's been one kind of character and one kind of sexuality shown throughout the history of cinema and media. So I think a lot of writers kind of lean towards that. And so I think it's important to have a queer woman of color in there, being able to make sure that it's done right, especially on a channel that's that big. That means a lot. It means you have to get it right, because that's going to millions of people, and how you show that character is gonna affect how people feel about us.
I'm married to a man, but I continue to talk about my bisexuality because it is a part of who I am. But in continuing to talk about it, I have many tiny little moments of coming out all the time. And I think for women, it's been, some of the representation in the media that makes it sort of like fetishized has also given way to more people being able to discuss it. And that can allow for more conversations as opposed to male bisexuality, which I think is like still sort of, people don't talk about it.
Normally, I feel there's a misconception that, let's say you're in a heteronormative relationship, you're no longer bi. And I have friends that are women that are married to men, and it's like they're seen as, oh, you're not bi anymore, or you're not bi enough. Because I just feel like it's an internal thing. And I think it's probably patriarchal, and that you're seen as, oh, you have to prove yourself in this relationship to show that you're queer enough. And I don't think that that's necessarily just with us. I feel like that's a large part of the community deals with that.
Fans of shows are smart. The average person at home watching TV is looking for clues about story. They're consuming the art and they're watching for things and looking for hidden messages, or, sort of trying to get the most that they can out of a story. And so it was really gratifying to me to have fans of the show, once Rosa came out as bi, say things like, I knew it. I mean, that was so gratifying to me, because I had been playing her as queer for a long time.
I think fans were so adamant about Rosa being bisexual is just because we are craving that representation so badly. And I think it made sense. And honestly, when you watch her, for those of us that are bi, we're like, we knew. It was like, I see you. There's a reason I saw myself in her.
One of my dearest memories is being in Washington, DC for the Pride Parade a few years ago, and going out to breakfast, and this young man that was our server came over to our table and said, I'm a fan of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I've watched the show. I'm really happy to meet you. And then came out to me as bisexual in that moment at the table. We were chatting and said, my family's also right over there. They're having brunch. I'm just finishing up here, but my family's having brunch because I'm graduating this weekend and they're all here to support me. And I was like, that's so great. He said, they don't know. And I thought, oh God, this young man was brave enough to come over here to this table to talk to me and tell me and come out to me and tell me that he's bi. But he doesn't feel like he can talk to his family about it. And they're sitting right over there. They're 10 feet away from us. They're all here celebrating him, loving him, excited for this next step in his life. And he doesn't feel like he can share that with them. And it was so, I felt so honored and privileged that in this moment in his life where all these wonderful things were happening for him, he ran into me and decided that he wanted to share that with me. And that was really, really special. But it's painful to think still that people can't share this necessarily about themselves with the people they love because they're afraid of being judged, particularly for men who are bi.
Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Jesus, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Jesus, blessed are those who have been persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Jesus is my Savior, Daddy, not you. And Jesus would be ashamed of you for judging me. He would be ashamed of you for turning your back on me. He would be ashamed.
There was this one particular scene in Grey's Anatomy where Callie Torres, who was not big like me, but she was of size compared to the rest of the actors, and she was Mexican-American and queer, although around this time she was still saying bye. And she was having a fight with her dad, Hector Elizondo, on the show, and I remember that so vividly. I don't have a good relationship with my dad. It was very, it just resonated, you know?
You think you can pray away the gay?
You can just sit and talk.
Oh, no, but you can't pray away the gay.
Calliope Efigenia Torres.
You can't pray away the gay!
The thing is, when I talk about Sara Ramirez as an icon in the queer community, one of the things that has just been so magnificent about their journey is that at every step of the way, they just continue to be themselves and welcome us into it.
It's called LGBTQ for a reason. There's a B in there, and it doesn't mean badass. Okay, it kind of does, but it also means bi.
Callie Torres went out of her way to always make sure that we remembered that there was a B in there and it didn't just mean badass.
The largest part of the LGBTQ community is the bisexual community, and a lot of people don't know that. And yet, we don't see enough representation. And bisexuality is sometimes used as a plot device, right? And instead of as a real part of someone's humanity. So we definitely need to see much, much more.
I think that because of stigmas, it's absolutely a thing they always, as soon as they say bisexual, they're like, oh, it's a woman. Absolutely, it's a female. And that's not fair because bisexual men exist.
I think the lack of male bisexual representation on television and in film is such a bummer because there's so many bisexual people in this world and they really deserve to be seen in all their beauty and glory and all their messiness and all their in their full human selves, just like any other person, human being deserves to see themselves on television, in film.
I imagine, let's be real here, in the community, I think that there's a lot of homophobia. I think there's a lot of queer phobia within the community. So I don't even know if people necessarily feel comfortable coming out as safely as, say, I do. I don't know if men are welcomed as much. I don't know. I think that's a societal thing that we'll have to work on. I don't know, that it's gonna take a little bit to get it to change how people view that, people outside of our community.